Hello, everyone. Welcome to a special talk show about the insight of Golden Visa developments that Mercan co-organized with Nomad Gates for international Nomad registers. Just 5 days after the release of final draft of the controversial bill, More Housing, from the cabinet of the Prime Minister, substantial change of the proposed law again stirred up lots of online discussions about the future for the Golden Visa investor. That's why we have decided to set up this special talk show to give you all updates, clarifications, and legal opinions about the development of the bill and to answer concerns that people they care about. So my name is Jasmine, the Global Business Development Director of Mercan Group, and here with me today is the A-team guest speakers, Mrs. Ines Mura, the lawyer and general manager of IAS Legal Services Provider Firm, Jody Villanova, the president of Mercan Properties, and Jerry Morgan, founder and CEO of Mercan Group. Within 3 days, our supporting team received a lot of questions sent from Nomad registers. We group it into 4 main categories: the Golden Visa ending, the D2, the project, and the processing timeline. We will try to address all your concerns at once today. The talk show will have 3 parts. Part 1, Golden Visa developments with Ines Mura. Part 2, the project developments with Mercan, especially with Jerry Morgan and Jody Villanova. Part 3 is the Q&A section and how we can be able to beat the deadline. Before I leave the presentation to Ines, here is some summary of what has happened from 16th of February until now. By 16th of February, the Cabinet of the Prime Minister announced a first draft of the More Housing Bill, a proposed package solution to tackle housing crisis in Portugal and to provide more housing access to vulnerable groups. The bill underwent public discussion period for a month until 24th of March, receiving a lot of public critics, professionals, investors, stakeholders' ideas, and solution providing to the government. By 31st of March, the Council of Ministers approved the More Housing Bill and final draft released on 14th of April, ready to wait for a date at Parliament debate. The date is not yet set until May, and we will be hearing more in detail about the procedure to pass a bill later with the IAS lawyer, Ines Mura. So let's take a look at some major changes in the final draft of the proposed law. The Council of Ministers still keen on ending the Golden Visa program. However, some positive news in the final draft proposed that the first thing is there is no retroactivity on all applications. Second, all news and applications waiting for the approval is accepted under current regime until the new law takes effective. Third, the Golden Visa program will be converted into D2, Entrepreneur Visa program, with the exception for the minimum stay. And the minimum stay still remains 7 days per year for the Golden Visa card holders. And this requirement also applies for permanent residence card holder under the Golden Visa scheme. And the next thing is the government proposed to promote more on the cultural investment scheme and the implementation of the new law 1 day after its promulgation. So now I will now leave the talk show back to Ines Mura, who will give us a brief presentation about IAS and basic step and timeline first for a Golden Visa application before we come right away to the questions on fire section with her. So Ines.
Hello. Yes, hello, Jasmine. Thank you so much for your introduction. So my name is Ines. I'm the general manager of IAS. IAS is a consulting company that basically provides full range of services to all its clients regarding the Golden Visa program in Portugal, and then citizenship or permanent residency. We have a big team of legal lawyers, a legal and paralegal team, lawyers and paralegals to support all the process of the immigration for investors. So throughout the whole process, we're here to support you, and we do everything that you need relating to the Golden Visa program in Portugal. So as you know by now, we work with 2 investment categories in 2022 and to date, which are the 350 investment in the rehabilitation category that includes buildings over 30 years or located in city centers. And these are high density areas. That's why the investment is 350. And then you have the 208 category that corresponds to a 20% discount over the 350. And also in the rehabilitation category, buildings over 30 years, but outside urban rehabilitation area, outside urban rehabilitation areas, but in low density territories. That's why you have here the discount. So the steps in terms of the Golden Visa program, you initiate with the signing of the contract, then we obtain a tax ID number, we open a bank account for the investor to transfer, you transfer the funds, we do the deed on your behalf, submit all civil documents to the RE portal, and then you start your Golden Visa process. After that, you get pre-approved, you get a notice to come for biometrics in Portugal, and once you complete your biometrics, you get approved, you get your card, you begin your residency program, and after 2 renewals, you'll reach year 5, where you are given the opportunity to apply for permanent residency or citizenship. Other than that, we have now the questions that are more relevant and that Jasmine asked me to kind of give you some feedback on. The first question that we have here is the insight of Golden Visa developments. We have, when will be the Golden Visa real deadline? So we have a process that started on the 16th of February, where the government announced a number of changes, potential changes to the program. And then this is just a PowerPoint with just some general highlights. Then on the 30th of March, the government came back again with different proposals, still including, in any case, the end of the program. And now, a couple days later, about 2 weeks later, last Friday, the proposed bill was subject to Parliament, was presented to Parliament by the government, and that includes a very different proposal than the ones that have been divulged in the last 2 months by the government. So, first thing is that there is no deadline that we can anticipate at this stage. We do expect to have the first discussion on the bill on to be scheduled in the week between the 2nd week and the 3rd week of May, and there is no chance, so this is the general discussion, there is no way of telling how long this discussion is going to take. So we are always considering something in the range of at least 1 month for this discussion to be held in Parliament. Then we have the discussion in the special committee. We don't know how long this is going to take either, because everyone needs to be reminded that this is indeed a very complex bill that relates to a lot of matters other than Golden Visa. So let's imagine in normal times, if this was a regular bill, we could see an approval if the issue is not sent to Constitutional Court, or I think about end of June, beginning of July, middle of July, but it can go all the way to September. So it's really an evolving situation, okay? So it's important to take in mind that if you want to invest, you should do it at once. I think that all lawyers and developers in Portugal are saying the same, and it's true. You are grandfathered in the rules that you invest in. It's very important to know. But indeed, there is no real deadline that we can indicate at this stage. ASAP, as soon as possible, I think is the best advice that anyone can give you right now. So moving to the next.
So what you're saying is actually there's no real deadline here, because people keep talking about the deadline like there is an invisible deadline over, and some predict of about 45 days to the deadline, and some predict about 60 days to the deadline. So basically what you're saying that we will have 1 month at the parliament for the debate, and then later we will see the next step, right?
Yes, exactly. The 45 days are deadlines that are written, they are theoretical basically, but are never complied with, much less on a law that is this complex and this complicated, that faces so many challenges and is being so contested. I really wouldn't say that the 45 deadline has a chance to be met.
Okay, so let's talk about the procedure to pass a bill.
Yes, of course. So in terms of procedure, what we have, and I think that we have a chart here, we had, like I said, on the 16th of February, there was an announcement that just had a PowerPoint with a couple of bullet points. On the 15th of March, there was a period for public discussion. On the 14th of March, that public discussion ended. All relevant stakeholders really addressed, send notices to the government, send exposures to the government, just explaining how they felt, how they saw the proposed announcement. Then the final proposal was sent to Parliament, and that also took into consideration those inputs that came from the public discussion. And right now we are waiting. We should hear about this Wednesday or Thursday of the next week, when the Parliament's discussions on this bill will start. I anticipate that they should start between the 8th and the 19th of May. This would be a normal deadline for the discussions to start. When they start, I can anticipate. When they land, no one can tell you. So I would say that a 30-day deadline is admissible, is something that we can anticipate. Probably a bit longer, depending a lot on how much this law will be challenged in Parliament. This package will be challenged in Parliament because it's golden visa, real estate, tax, residential. So there are a lot of points here to be considered. After this, there will be committees, special committees that will be incorporated to discuss special deals, special points in this bill, in this proposal. After that, it goes back, the package will go back to Parliament to be voted and approved. Then after its final approval, it goes to the President of the Republic, that can either sign and promulgate the law, or that can veto it politically and send it to Parliament to be changed because he doesn't agree with something included there, or can be sent to the Constitutional Court in case the President feels like there's something relevant that should be checked by the Constitutional Court in Portugal.
So assuming that all the steps done at the last step is the President signing and promulgations, what we can see from the final draft of the government is they propose that the law will take immediate effect the day after the publication. So the question here is, will there be any chance of transition time there?
Well, there is a good chance. There is no transition time currently included in the proposal. This is something that can be, it has been in the past, including during parliamentary discussions, okay? So the constitutional law professors that came and rose against the way that the government was intending to present the law were clear, also saying that it would be in good faith to include a transition period. That being said, that's something that in the coming months we'll have more visibility on. So what I would say is it's possible, and I would say maybe likely to have here a transition period. If I was an investor, I wouldn't be 100% counting on it because we don't really know if it's going to be included or not. But I would say it's possible and maybe likely to have a transition period here.
So time that we can control, I mean, it's like the investor can control right now is until the deadline,
yes,
until the President sign.
I would work under the assumption, work with that assumption and then wait for the best. But I would prepare for having as it is in terms of period right now.
So let's talk a little bit about D2. What is unexpected things happening in the proposal that the Golden Visa program, now the government, they propose that it will be converted to D2. So why D2 is proposed for the Golden Investor?
Well, that's something that the government, I'm sure, will have a very good opportunity to answer in Parliament. From a structural point of view, the visas are not related. They don't have, it's a choice. I think it's a choice. They try to find a solution to continue to say that investment is welcome and we have an alternative. D2 is really not an alternative. That's also something that we've been saying since, well, the announcement on the 30th of March. Like I said, I think this will be still something that will change quite a bit in Parliament. But right now, the spirit of the law is we'll have the Golden Visa program up and running until date X. All submissions will be subject to the rules in place at the time of submission, and approvals exactly the same thing, but they will be under an umbrella that, well, the elected visa was the D2 visa, okay? Not because they are super related, not because they are alternatives to each other, but probably just because it was the most similar one that they had in the general immigration regime, okay? So probably just because of that. I wouldn't, like I said, it's very preliminary. In Portugal, we really do feel that this discussion is just starting. So I wouldn't advance a lot on, does it make sense? Does it not make sense? I'm sure that it's very clear the spirit is to guarantee that there's a transition, even if we have calling it now a D2 subject to RE laws, or Golden Visa laws, it's probably the most appropriate terminology that I can think of. So, yeah.
But what if it passed? Will it conflict with the current D2 regime? Because it seems like the original D2 that we see is the entrepreneur visa, is the startup visa, right?
Yeah,
and it requires some times that you have to stay in Portugal and you need to have a house in Portugal.
Yes.
So
the government, Jasmine, was quite cautious here, and they explained that, yes, it will be transition to the D2 regime, but the rules will still be the ones that are in place at the time of the submission, both for approval and for renewals, okay? Also, in terms of family members, for instance, they are not affected by this because the law that allows family members to be part of the process is not under revision at the time. So I would say that who wants to invest in D2 will invest in D2. Who wants to invest in Golden Visa should invest in Golden Visa because they will benefit from the rules for a while longer. They are not, there's no conflict because there's no similarities. That's how I see it. I think it was just a way for the government to transition from one regime to the other. Although, as we see it, everyone that transitions to this regime will have a special D2 under RE rules, how I see it.
Mm-hmm. And also, this is a subject that will be discussed at the parliament debate. So we never know if it will be passed or it is just a suggestion from the government.
Extensively discussed, I would say.
Right. So yeah, we'll just move to the next questions. Actually, there are so many changes from these previous 2 months.
Yes.
Let's talk a little bit about SEF or the new agency. Will SEF be closed permanently based on the news recently that there will be a new agency that will take over the application?
Well, on the 6th of April, the Council of Ministers approved the decree law that basically establishes that there will be a replacement of SEF. And this diploma defines the creation of the Portuguese Agency for Minorities, Migration and Asylum. The idea is for this new entity to take over the administrative competencies of SEF and absorb the High Commission for Migrations, okay? There is no date, well, there was a date to be set, and this agency will have a 6-month transition period, but only after the decree law that was made public on 6th of April comes into force. When will this decree law come into force? We don't know. The government didn't say. So, will SEF be permanently closed? Yes, contingent to the government issuing their correct legislation. When will this happen? Again, no one knows. So this is something that we are waiting for to hear more on. Like I said, 6th of April, we had this decree law made public, but nothing ever since, okay?
So right now, everything SEF will still process the paperwork until you, as you say, that the law is public.
Yeah, once the law is public, then there will be a 6-month transition period. But like I said, just going backwards, there is no date for the decree law to come into force, so that the 6 months deadline starts counting.
So what can we expect with this new agency in terms of efficiency?
Well, the agency, the thought process behind creating this agency was exactly to increase efficiency. So separating the police side of the equation from the administrative side of the equation, creating more, creating different types of services and so on, creating more specialization. So I say that I hope that it's a bit more efficient than SEF. That being said, public services, we also know that they work under their own rhythm. Let's call it like that.
Well, we look forward to see how effective they will put in place, because, you know, last year we experienced a lot of delay processing from SEF, and we all hope that with the new agency setup, this will speed up the whole procedure for all the investors.
Yes.
Well, let's talk about the make the cuts, because our talk today is not only about the insight of golden visa developments, but we also talk about how we can be able to beat an invisible deadline, as we say, for golden visa investors, assuming that we only have 1 month to go.
Okay. So we are working now, we are kind of working backwards, right? We want to, our goal here is to have the submission made. So initially we have, well, the clients receive, the investor receive all the current the necessary documentation. The documentation is issued, and the first step is indeed to get a Portuguese tax ID, because then that's what allows you to open a bank account and perform the deed. So right now, investors are given 2 options. First, to open a bank account, to the transfer, and then to the acquisition. And another alternative that requires an individual analysis for each investor is the option of the direct transfer. So instead of during the opening of a bank account, because you still need a bank account in Portugal, investors are given the opportunity to, if approved, transfer to the developer and do the deed immediately after. In that case, you would need to have a bank account in Portugal open at the time of the deed. This will allow us to anticipate greatly the deadlines for deeds. So after that, in 1 or 2 days, you get to do your deed. And once the deed is done and we have your documents for submission, we can do it as quickly as 24 hours. So we believe that even when we have a deadline, we'll be able to receive requests, applications, do the deed, obtain the NIF, receive the transfer, do the deed, and do submissions until very, very, very close to the deadline.
So what I can see on the screen, and I'm trying to calculate, is we can be able to do the deed between 10 days to 30 days.
Exactly.
Thank you, Ines. So thank you, Ines, for the first part that we're talking about the developments of the Golden Visa program. So we'll come back with you for more legal opinions about the projects later. And following after, we will be hearing the talk of Mr. Jordi Villanova, the president of Mercan Properties, about Mercan in Portugal and its achievement through the Golden Visa program.
Thank you, Jasmine. Thank you, Ines. I think that was very clarifying. So let me just share with you what Mercan Group in Portugal is currently doing. I'll just move the slide into the next slide. Thank you. So I probably have shared with you in other occasions, but Mercan in Portugal was the first one to do three things. It was the first one in 2015, when we were established, to invest into the rehabilitation category. We're also the first ones to actually offer the co-ownership investment mode for Golden Visa. And we were the first ones in Portugal that we introduced the buyback concept. And we actually took the buyback concept from our more than 25 years of experience since the time that Jerry founded the company in Montreal. So in Portugal today, we are by far the largest developer in hospitality. We have over 450 people in the 7 hotels that are already under operation, 110 people in our offices, more than 2,500 investors, and more than 850 million euros under management. In the next slide, that's something that in the past weeks has been very relevant, which is the impact of Golden Visa investment to the local economy growth. And actually, this has been used as an example in our dialogue with the government of the impact and the success of the Golden Visa in Portugal. So we have ourselves created more than 2,300 indirect jobs, and we are planning to create over 3,000 jobs in hotel operations and construction. But what has been very relevant in portraying the role of Mercan Group in Portugal is that our investors have contributed not only to the development of areas like the north in Porto with 11 hotels, also in Lisbon with 4 properties, but most of our properties actually happen to be in places like Évora, like Beja, like Faro and Lagos. One of the key questions is, what do you see, how do you see the tourist activity evolving in Portugal? And we would like to share with you just very relevant facts. So if we look at today's results in the past 2 months, the past 3 months, and if we compare with the results pre-pandemic, we are already over 25% in terms of revenue and in terms of occupation. But let's not forget something. In Portugal and in Europe in general, we have not yet enjoyed the coming back of the tourism from Asia. So we predict that in the coming months, in the coming years, the results will even be much better than what we had up till today. Now, this is one of the key success factors of the Mercan Group in Portugal. Today, with our partners, Hilton, Marriott, Wyndham, and IAG, we happen to be the only company in Portugal with such a diverse partnerships, and one of the few in Europe that has this variety of franchisors. And there are 4 things that these partners bring. The first one, which is very important, is the validation. When we look at the project, when we decide to invest into a project, before we go to the investors like we will be doing today, like Jerry will be talking about today, the first thing we do is we talk to our partners and we say, what do you think about this project? What should be the average daily rate? What should be the occupancy rate? And we validate the business plan, which will be the basis also for the buyback. Second thing, and very important, design. So their advice and guidelines in design is one of the key success factors to enable us to build the properties on time and on budget. Third thing, which is not a minor thing, which is the reservation system. These partners, they provide more than 50% of the reservation system into our properties, which provide a very well managed business plan and risk in terms of going forward for the investors. And the fourth thing, which is unique in the Mercan Group, is that we are one of the few companies that are able to manage so different type of properties, and we are able to deal with reservation systems from at least 4 different international groups. And of course, the test is in the pudding. So of course, in our business model, we could talk about projects, we could talk about the future, but let's talk about the reality. So today, the rating of the current operation hotels in Portugal are, as you can see, there's no property below 9, and there's no hotel chain in Portugal that all the hotels are above 9. And of course, that's the basis for generating high average daily rates and high occupancy rates. And the last one is, as a key, was an example of our success, the openings that we just did 2 weeks ago with the Hilton Tapestry in Porto. This week, we opened the Renaissance, which is the largest hotel convention center in the center of Porto. And we plan to open the first international brand, a Hilton in Évora, in the next 2 weeks. Thank you. And now I'll let Jerry continue with the presentation.
So thanks, Jordi, for sharing with us the overview of all the hotel projects of Mercan has in Portugal and also its contribution to the local economy. Now we'll be expecting to hear from Jerry Morgan, the founder of Mercan Group, to launch the newest project of Mercan today. So Jerry, take your turn. So Jerry, you are mute.
Sorry. Thank you, Jasmine. Thank you, Jordi and Ines, for your comments. It's really a pleasure to be here today, and I want to thank everybody for joining us in our session. I'd like to talk about our latest project, which will be in Algarve, Ponte do Val. Pardon my pronunciation. This is our latest project. And this is the overall picture. This will be a 5-star hard rock resort in a location called Ponte do Val, which is in Portimão. And this, you can see, it includes 3 different plots here. One which is the main hotel. Second, on the right is the branded residence, and in front you have the activity with the restaurants and beach activities and swimming pools. Sorry. Oh. Okay, here's an overview. Sorry, the thing keeps changing. Okay, here's the initial picture. Now let me get back to the second slide. So here's an overview of the park. This is the hotel itself is 275 rooms. It's right in front of you. It's a 5-star hotel. To the left of the hotel will be serviced apartments, branded residences. The hotel itself will have 4 restaurants, and the resort will have 3 swimming pools. This project is a 280,000 euro investment per investor, and it's for 245 investors. As I mentioned, 245 investors. It's located in a city called Portimão, and this is a part of Portimão, which is in the Algarve. This particular part of Portimão is very famous for Val Beach. You have the Benegil Caves, and in Portimão, which is the 2nd largest city in the Algarve. You also have the international circuit, and they've had some very international car races there. And you also have the famous Portimao Marina. So it's a very active location. And the advantage here, it's year round. It's not a seasonal sort of location. Here's a picture of the locations. You can see the marina in front of you and the beach to the left. So it's a very, it's a great spot on the ocean. And I'll just ask Jane, change the slides for me because it's not working. It'll be easier for me. So here's an overview of the locations. You can see in the white, this is a site location. Of course, it's just green grass now. It's basically leading onto the beach. As you can see in the picture, you have a golf course right behind the resort. And to the right, you have the city of Portimao and the marina on the far right. And in front, you have a number of very famous beaches. So it's a fantastic location. You have the caves and you have nature just a walk away. The project concept itself, this will be a 5-star hard rock resort, which will be the first hard rock resort in Portugal. It's going to include 275 rooms, 5-star rooms, and it's also going to have service branded apartments as part of the project, which will have individual ownership, and this will be available in a different presentation. It's going to have 3 swimming pools, spa, gym, kids club, and exclusive private beach club. In addition, there's also going to be plenty of meeting space for conventions, weddings, and other events. Here's the lobby area. So you have an extensive lobby. You'll have bars and restaurants throughout the facilities. As you know, with the Hard Rock concept, there's lots of restaurants and entertainment as part of the concept. The rooms will be 5-star rooms. And as I mentioned, there's going to be 3 swimming pools on the location. There'll be 1 at each hotel and service apartments. Then there's also going to be 1 near the beach. There's going to be a very nice spa and gym located on the facilities. So this project is for 245 investors. The investment is 280,000 euros per investor. Now, again, on this type of project, we're paying all your taxes. So we pay your IMT, we pay your VAT, and so you're just really in for around 280,000 plus your stamp duty. There's no return on the project, but you do get 1 free week per year, and you have the guaranteed buyback at the end. So that's basically it's a previewing of our new project, the Hard Rock Resort. The full package will be available next week for people interested in the project. Now, we still have some units available in our 350,000 offering. On the 350,000, it's the same as we pay all your taxes, you get 1 free week per year, and you have the guaranteed buyback at the end. The difference is you get a return of 3% per year, payable upon the opening of the property, and payable each year as long as you own a unit. So the 2 projects we still have available space in is one is in Lisbon. It's the Hilton Hotel in downtown Lisbon, right in the historical district. And the second is in Porto. It's an expansion of our existing 4-star Marriott Renaissance Hotel right in the heart of the city of Porto. Here's a quick view of the Lisbon Hotel. As you can see, it's an existing building that's going to be renovated. It's right on the river, and it's right, this particular area is very popular. It's considered very trendy, and you have lots of bars and restaurants nearby. Here's an overview of the site. As you can see, the gold picture is the hotel. Right beside it, you have the Time Out Market. And this area, as I mentioned, is considered quite trendy right now. And this is part of the historical area with plenty of restaurants and bars in the neighborhood. Here's another picture. This is a 4-star hotel that's going to have 70 rooms. This project for 110 investors. As I mentioned, the investment amount is 350,000 euros. In it, you have your bar and restaurants. You'll have your spa. You'll have your lobby area, all up to 4-star standards. Your rooms. And this project is for 110 investors at 350,000 each. As I mentioned, we pay all your taxes, your VAT and your IMT, and you receive 1 free week per year, and you have the guaranteed buyback at the end. In addition, you receive a return of 3% per year, payable upon the opening of hotel and payable each year as long as you own your unit. So that's our first project. Our second project, we go up into Porto. And this is kind of an interesting project because the initial hotel we opened just this week. And it's a beautiful 4-star hotel by Marriott Renaissance. And this is a picture of the hotel that actually exists, and you can reserve a room now. This particular project is just an expansion of this existing hotel. So it's really adding approximately 80 rooms to the existing hotel. Here's a picture of our grand opening, which took place recently. And the project itself is really just an expansion. So it's quite simple of the existing hotel. And basically adding additional rooms, restaurants, there's another swimming pool, and just increasing the capacity. So this becomes the largest hotel and convention center in the city of Porto. And Porto itself, you know, it's a major center of the north of Portugal, and big on tourism, big on industry, and big on historical part of the program. Here's a location. As you can see, in the white is where the hotel will be located. So it's really in the heart of the historical district, yet bordering on the business district. So you're getting the best of both worlds. You're getting your tourism and you're getting your business clients. So it's great from all aspects. And it's also a huge convention center. So you're going to get your meetings and conventions and your weddings and other events taking place there. Here's the entrance of the hotel. So the expansion is going to be 79 rooms. We're going to add a spa. We're going to add a gym. And we're going to add another swimming pool. So this project is for 95 investors at 350,000 each. 350,000 each. We pay on this project, we pay all your taxes, your IMT and your VAT, which is about 35,000. You get 1 free week per year, and you have the guaranteed buyback at the end. In addition, you receive a return of 3% per year, payable upon the opening of the hotel, and payable each year as long as you own the unit. So those are our offerings for now. What I'd like to do is just talk a little bit about our track record. So the first two properties in this picture, the first one is Casa. This is a 5-star hotel by VNet, which is IHG. This is our very first project, so we kind of have sentimental value to us. It's located right in the heart of Porto on the main street. So this hotel is up and running and doing very well. Beside it, you have a boutique hotel. This is Casa Delirious, and it's about 40 miles from Porto. And this is a boutique hotel, which is quite famous in the region for green wine. Then I go down to these next 3 hotels, which are all open. The first one is a Hilton Sir Catherine, which is right in the heart of Porto, right beside the famous tourism area called Sir Cathedral. This is open. Then we go down to 4 Points by Sheraton, which is in Montesinos. This particular hotel is 1 block from the main beach. So you get a lot of tourists in the area, and it's very attractive if you want to go to the beach. And the next one is it's a Wyndham. It's called Fontina, and it's on a famous shopping street called Santa Catarina. Then we move to our new list. The next one is a Hilton Porto Arts Hotel. This hotel is right in the heart of this historic area, but more on the cultural side. This hotel just opened in April, and it's up and running and doing very well. Beside, as I mentioned, is the Renaissance Lapa, which we opened last week. And the next one is the Hilton Garden Inn in Evora, which will be opening very shortly. Then on the next slide, we have the Riverside Marriott Hotel. And this one just across the river. This will perhaps have some of the best views overlooking the Porto UNESCO site. So this hotel is basically looking right at it. So fantastic views of the city. The next one is an all suites hotel in the historic district of Porto. And then the last one here is a Hilton Hotel in the heart of the downtown of Porto. Now we go on to the next set of slides. We have a Holiday Inn Express, which is our second hotel in the city of Evora. This will be opening at the end of this year. Then we have our 5-star Marriott Resort, which will be in Lagos. And then on the next slide, we have a Moxie Lisboa Hotel, which is under construction. Then we go into our next set of hotels. We have 2 Hilton hotels in Lagos Marina. Then we have the Lapa Extension. And finally, we have the Doubletree Hotel in the Lisbon airport area. And finally, our last 2 hotels is in Faro, will be an Indigo 4-star property. And then we have the Hilton in Santa Andre 4-star property as well. So, 2 more. And then on the next slide, we have the Holiday Inn Beja, which is a Holiday Inn property. And beside it, we'll have our Lisboa one I just talked about earlier. So that gives you an overview of our properties. What you'll see is properties that are great brand names, great locations, and that'll do very well long-term. Very, very good product. And I think we're pretty proud of what we put together. Thank you.
Thanks, Jerry, for sharing to everyone available projects for investment. Next part, we will go to the Q&A section. So I also welcome back Jordi and Ines with me. But before that, please give me 2 minutes break so we can gather all live questions and trying to arrange with those that already sent before to us. We'll see you shortly.
Só tu podes fazer este mundo rodar.
Só tu podes fazer a escuridão brilhar.
Só tu podes emocionar-me.
Trazer-me essa cor.
Encher o meu coração
De amor.
só tu podes causar essa mudança.
Quando me agarras,
Eu entendo essa dança. Na minha tua mão, tu és o meu único destino. És o meu sonho real, o meu único tu. Visita o teu mar, o teu sol, o teu património e a tua cultura. Tu podes viajar pelo melhor destino do mundo. Visita Portugal.
Hi everyone, welcome back to the Q&A section. So let's start with all 4 categories that we're trying to group for everyone. We'll be talking about the buyback, the project, the golden visa ending and change, the citizenship, and also the information about the processing timeline these days. So first, let's talk about buyback. All the questions that the attendants and potential investors sent in to us before the webinar, they're mostly concerned about the buyback situation. So the first question now, I think will be to Jerry. Can you explain more how Mercan can be able to do the buyback for the investors? And in which circumstance we can request for the refund of the investment?
Okay, thank you, Jasmine. So normally when people invest in real estate, they tend to take on too much debt, and that's when they run into trouble. All our projects run on 100% equity. And with 100% equity, your cash flows are significantly higher. So all the profits are generated from the operations of the hotel are set aside into a fund to buy back the investors. By year 7, when the first buybacks occur, we've accumulated over 50% of the funds that are required to buy back investors. Now, not all investors cash out at the same time for various reasons, whether it be language or personal situation. So we have a graduated cash out over time from year 7 onwards. Now, if at any point in time, the demand for the buyback would exceed the funds we have available, because the hotel has no debt on it at all, it is very easy for us to access lines of credit or other short-term instruments to cover any shortfalls that we may have. So we're basically overcapitalizing the front end to leave room for leverage at the back end should it be required.
But well, talking about the terms, is this buyback clause something guaranteed? And how the investors are protected under this clause? Is there any situation where Mercan would just walk away from the obligation with the investor? I think with these questions, we would like to hear the legal opinion side from Ines.
Yes, of course. So can I explain more how Mercan, is this a question?
Yeah, the question is the buyback clause something guaranteed? And how the investor are protected under this clause?
Okay.
Is there any situation where Mercan will just walk away from the obligation with investor? This is actually the questions that I receive a lot from the potential investor before the webinar, and also in live webinar, we also see several questions relating to this clause.
Okay, so it's important to maybe explain things in little bits and pieces. So, is the buyback clause something guaranteed? It's a contract, it's binding, it obliges a party to do something if something happens. So, yes, it's a binding contract and a binding clause. Investors in certain situations that are clearly outlined in contracts are allowed, have the right to force Mercan to buy their position back. Okay, so if Mercan is in default of their obligations to buy the investor back, then the investor has a series of ways, of routes that they can go through and get to guarantee that Mercan indeed buys the investor back. There is no situation unless if the investor decides just to not do anything, to not react to the default, where Mercan can just continue in default. That's not the idea. Legally speaking, in Portugal, default is by definition a transitory situation. It's not meant to stay in default forever. So there are a lot of mechanisms, both from a legal standpoint, but mostly in this case from a contractual standpoint, that will empower the investor to force Mercan to buy them back. So it's not a situation where ever the investor has no means to respond to the default, not only to the response, but to guarantee that there are ways to make sure Mercan complies with what is in this case, an obligation, a contractual obligation, which would be to buy the investor back should certain events take place.
So I received one question, I think, from one of our potential investor, also talking about this point, and maybe because he already read the investor agreement and he read a clause mentioning about some penalty if there's some delay from Mercan's side on the buyback things. So what he is thinking is, what Mercan will give some penalty percentage of payment in case they delay for a buyback up to 1 year. Then what next?
Okay, so there's one thing that I need to disclose as a lawyer, and maybe a lawyer for some of the investors that are here. Contracts are confidential and they shouldn't be shared. Otherwise, there is liability for both parties. That's one thing that I would like to share, just as a preemption to everyone here. Contracts are confidential. There are confidentiality clauses in contracts, and they should be, and people should be careful with the exposure that certain things get. So that's my first point. My second point here is the following. The way that contracts are structured, a penalty is not and cannot be under Portuguese law something that is determined forever. Otherwise, it stops being a penalty and it becomes a rent. Okay, so a penalty by definition is temporary, mandatory temporary. A penalty exists for two reasons. One, to create an additional burden on a party to comply with an obligation, and second, to give some, well, compensation to the other party for a damage that they are incurring based on the default, okay? But by definition, it's temporary. Mandatorily, it needs to be temporary. That's the first thing. Second thing, the way that penalties are structured in Mercan agreements, they are add-ons to solutions. They are not the solution themselves. What do I mean by this? In case of default and without breaching confidentiality in Mercan agreements, in case of default, investors have two solutions that they can go to basically make sure Mercan complies with their obligations. So let's give the example of the buyback. Should the investor request a buyback, time goes by, the buyback is not fulfilled within the deadline agreed in the agreement, the investor has a solution. The investor goes to court, immediately a penalty is due, first thing, and the investor goes to court and files a very, very simple administrative action that is allowed under a contractual clause. And they ask the court to recognize that Mercan is in default, and indeed that they are entitled to use that specific legislative regulation mechanism that is called execução específica. So in that situation, the court would issue a decision. This is a very quick process. It usually takes between 3 to 6 months to be decided, and the court decision has the same value as a deed. Okay, so basically with that deed, the investor goes to or his legal representative, her legal representative goes to a court and, goes to a register and registers the court decision as if it was a deed. And all this can be done during the time where the penalty is due and payable. So you have an add-on. First, you have a solution, file a very simple, quick administrative action and get your solution. And at the same time, you get the penalty being paid for a certain duration of time. Second thing, if Mercan is convicted during these file proceedings, all costs of the investor must be borne for those file proceedings, must be borne by Mercan. So this costs zero at the end of the day to the investor. That's the first solution. Second solution, as we know, you are allowed to sell your share to a third party. Yes, at the same time as you receive the penalty. And in that case, you are basically having an add-on to your solution in the form of a compensation. So the penalty is not the way to enforce the buyback. The penalty does not guarantee a buyback. That's not why penalties exist in the Portuguese legal framework, and I would dare say worldwide. Penalties exist to compensate an investor during a determined or a non-defaulting party during a determined period of time, and also to work as a push to guarantee that the defaulting party complies with their obligation. creates an additional burden. So I guess there are a few things here that require some clarification, but I can leave you with just with two thoughts. A penalty is not the way to enforce an obligation. And secondly, it's in this case an add-on. Actually, there could be even no penalty. You go to court, you claim all the damages that you have. So indeed, this is not even mandatory, okay, under any kind of legislation. This is an add-on to the solutions that the contract and the Portuguese law actually afford investors. So it's a plus, it's not a minus. I don't know if I was clear, Jasmine.
I think it's great to hear because so many people, in terms of this time, people, they're really care for the buyback, how they can get the money back. And what if the golden visa changed? And by the way, talking about the golden visa changes, one question that I also received from the attendant is, what is the risk of signing with Mercan if there are changes to the golden visa legislation? And what are the access clauses and how are investors protected? I think this, I would like to hear some opinion from Jordi or Jerry.
Where's the question?
What is the risk of signing with Mercan if there are changes to the golden visa legislation?
Well, I think in our investment agreement, it states very clearly, if you're not able to get your golden visa, we will refund your money. So you had that initial protection. In light of the government legislation and the activity that happened, we added a second side letter, which again would state that if you're not able to get your golden visa, we will exercise a buyback. So we have the agreement itself, and then we have an extra agreement we've added to it. So both are relevant and both will protect the investors.
Thank you, Jerry. So about the buyback amount, will the investor have to pay any tax for it when it comes to the time that they receive the refund of investment? So shall I direct to Jordi for the question?
Yes, thank you. So on the buyback, what the investor agreement also states very clearly is the buyback is for the amount of the purchase, so it's 350,000 euros for the project of the 350,000 euros or 280,000 euros for the 280,000 euros. Also, it's our experience in this type of business model that if someone invests today, obviously will be buying back, so they will get the residency card, and then 5 years later they'll apply for the citizenship. They will get the citizenship. So at that time, which is probably a bit over 6 years, that's when the legislation based on the tax legislation there, it's when the decision is made about the taxes that are due, and normally, especially in a place like Portugal, it's difficult to foresee what's going to be the legislation in 6 or 7 years' time in terms of taxes.
So what you're saying that we're not really sure about the tax that they will have to pay in the future?
No, so basically, in terms of the investors that are purchasing today a property, they shouldn't pay any tax on the buyback. But what we are saying also is that in 6-7 years' time, we expect again to have the same legislation, which means that they will not have to pay any taxes. But taxes is sometimes something that it's beyond Mercan.
It can be updated by times. Thank you, Jordi, for your answer. Talking about the projects that we have just saw it from Jerry, when you talk about the Hard Rock Hotel project, it is a 245 investors. So launching the new project with 245 investors seems to be ambitious during this time. How Mercan can ensure to attract all the investors before the deadline?
Okay, we used to launch projects well in advance when the other ones are not completely filled up. With the announcements that were made recently, we held off on bringing new projects onto the market to make sure the old ones were completely filled. And we're at that point now. So pretty much every project we've ever brought up is going to be filled pretty much by the end of May. So that's good news for everybody that invested in a project. Everything's going to be full. Now, what that resulted in by holding back units is we've oversold our 280,000 categories by about 500 units, which means we have about 500 investors for these 245 units that we just bring onto the market now. So one could almost safely say that it's almost sold out, or it is sold out. So in terms of saying is it's ambitious, no, because we just held off offering it to make sure everything was full, and that led to a oversell capacity on the other projects that now can move into this project. So in fact, we have to move about 400 people from the existing projects into this project. So there's really no issue at all.
So besides this project, do Mercan have the other projects, as you mentioned, is that Mercan already oversold around 400 units?
Yes, we do have more projects, but we're going to fill project by project to make sure investors are protected. Each project is fully subscribed, fully funded, so there's no risk at all for investors. So we're managing our product to make sure it's maximized, it's fully funded, and it's a great project.
Thank you, Jerry. Jordi, for the Hard Rock Hotel projects, how long does it take for construction?
So basically, we plan to start construction at the right after summer, and we expect to complete construction and to be in operation by the end of 2025.
By the
So
end
that's about 2 years time frame, a bit more.
Okay, so if somebody decides to invest in these resort projects, and let's say 12 months from now, they receive the residence card and the project not yet completed, because as we estimate the construction timeline is 2 years. So then where will the family will stay?
Yeah, that's a great question, Jasmine. So one of the advantages of the Mercan Group is that because we have different hotels opened, so not only they have the opportunity, even if their project is not completed, to spend the 7 days once they have got the card in another property, but actually what we are seeing is that some investors, they're really enjoying coming to Portugal for the 7 days, because they can choose a couple of days in Porto, couple of days in Évora. Very soon they'll be able also to enjoy a couple of days in Lisbon.
So we have a full range of hotels and rooms to provide to the investors and their family members.
Exactly.
Thank you, Jordi. Now moving to the other sections, we will talk about the processing. One question sending from the attendants: what if we just transfer the investment, and while waiting for our case to be submitted, the government announces the new law takes effective immediately? What can be done in this situation? I think this question definitely goes to Ines.
That's more, although I understand the question, it's a lot more theoretical than possible. What do I mean by this? It's not like we're going to wake up one day and have the deadline be upon us without any kind of notice. So we'll plan for all investors that are coming closer to the end of the deadline. So let's imagine we will not be waiting for you will not be waiting for your case to be submitted. We will submit your case immediately upon having the documents. Let's imagine that there's a specific document that you won't have because technically it's not possible to have it. And within 1 week, for instance, and the program is closing in 1 week, we'll submit you without the document and we'll file that document at a later stage. This is not something that we want to do regularly because it does create some small delays in terms of processing for SEF, but it's a great solution, especially in times like this. So I do not anticipate a scenario where that would happen. Should that for any specific situation happen, then you have your side letter that guarantees that you are entitled to get your money back.
Thank you, Ines. So talking about this too is about timeline. What can you say about the processing time until the investor can receive the first residence card based on current statistics?
Well, I would say based on current statistics aren't exactly the right moment to anticipate because we had a huge surge in demand. But I would say 16 to 18 months following the beginning of the process. So day zero, no bank account, no tax ID, no nothing. Hopefully, I mean, we'll be able to shorten this deadline, both with just the more regular analysis by step, and even with the new agency stepping in and helping increase basically the workflow.
Processing? Mhm,
Yeah,
the workflow.
exactly.
There is one question from, I think, American's investor, because it's talking about the apostle process in the USA, because maybe everyone knows that that process can take some time. So actually his question is about how do you work around the lengthy apostle process in the USA? Can documents be submitted without it? So Ines, can you help
Yes.
to answer
Well,
it?
documents need to be submitted duly authenticated. Like I said, if we are close to the deadline, we can submit it without the authentication, and then we'll need to resubmit the document within the deadline that the document is subject to. So probably the document will need to be reissued at some point, and we'll resubmit it completely authenticated. So this is a solution in case of a close deadline or something like that, that we've adopted in the past with success.
Thank you, Ines. Hold on, continue, one more question for you. If we applied in December or January, but haven't yet done our biometrics and haven't yet received official approval, what happens if we do not get it before the new law is enacted?
Nothing. The process will continue normally, subject to the laws that you are under when you first were submitted.
But I believe the attendants also heard about the whole procedure that you explained, but I just
Yes.
want to raise the question.
Yes.
So she or he knows that the question was sent to us. Thank you, Ines. Now, next, we're moving to the other section is the golden visa ending. So the question is about if the Portugal golden visa program no longer available, what is the development plan of Mercan next year? I would say, Jordi, can you help to answer?
Yes, thank you. One of the things that Ines mentioned is that the government has clearly expressed their intention to continue attracting foreign investment. It might not be under the Golden Visa platform, but that's one of the things that in the coming weeks and months, we will see what is the new platform under which the government will be attracting foreign investment. And they've been also very clear. They would like to continue to attract foreign investment in certain areas, and hospitality infrastructure is in the list. So that's why, in terms of going forward, Mercan plans for next year is to continue developing the same type of infrastructure that we've been developing till today, and to continue working with the government, probably with a new platform that will accommodate investors into this type of opportunities. Yeah,
I see. So separately, it will be a traditional or commercial investments, and Mercan will continue to wait for the news from the governments about the immigration process.
Correct.
Thank you. Thank you, Jordi. Now, next questions. We'll be moving to make the cut. So the question is for Jerry. If we decide to invest today, how long does it take for the developer to issue us a deed and thus to let the lawyer submit our case to immigration service? I also want to mention that several questions that I received in live webinar talking about the timeline that they used to hear before is it takes about 2 to 4 months to get the file submitted. And how can it be done from the beginning of the presentations like Ines and I was discussing about is how we can be able to make the cut within 30 days. So I guess for these questions, we'll need to elaborate more and explain more about the formula, the way that we can make it. So Jerry?
Well, I think Ines laid out a pretty reasonable and comprehensive strategy that could get something done between 14 and 28 days. And I think what really, and in her question and responses, there's some other key points that I heard. You know, basically, there's the old system where we have to have a bank account, and we're looking at 2 to 4 months. Now we're into a new scenario where time is of the essence. So we've adapted to the new situation where we've managed to bypass the bank accounts and structured a system that moves directly to the developer. So it's really the same investor account going straight to developer instead of going to Portugal and then to the developer. So that's a step that will save considerable amount of time. And we have to only work what we know. So when we say there could be hope and the situation could change, but for now we know that, and we have to plan that the end is near. It could be the end of June and it could be middle of July. And anybody that's investing has to plan for that. So you have to look at how fast you can do it. Right now, we're at the beginning of the cycle. So the 2 weeks, 3 weeks, or 4 weeks even that Ines mentions is fine. As we get closer to the actual date, as Ines mentioned, we can cut even more corners. You know, we could file without the no criminal. We could move directly from the deed to the account. You know, there's all kinds of steps that could, if we get to the last week, we could do it in the last week. It's not our preferred approach, but when we get there, we'll deal with that then. But for now, people have enough time to move forward in a not panic situation, knowing that if they start now, within 30 days, you have your file and you're locked in. And that's good for now. And as we're in an evolving situation where things can change for the positive or the negative. But I think what the lawyers will always advise you is what's in your best interest. And if they undertake it, they give you a timeline that we can meet. So I think we have a very prudent and good strategy to ensure anybody that wants to do it will be able to do it and on time.
But what are the drawbacks for transferring directly to Mercan account from the home country? Do we see any drawbacks from that?
Well, actually, I'll just talk briefly. If you look at the old system, investor transfers money to their personal account in Portugal, and then from their personal account in Portugal to the developer's account. Nothing's changed other than you've saved the time of setting up your account and you're transferring directly to the developer. So in fact, the beginning source and the end source have not changed.
Thank you, Jerry. So basically what we can do and make the cuts maybe between 2 weeks to 4 weeks, depending on the rate of transfer of the clients. When the fund is ready, they can make the transfer right away and we can submit the paperwork within 1 week or 2 weeks, right? So let's talk about D2. Several questions about D2 is very important because I want to talk back about D2 a little bit more and raise some more questions from the investors. So the first question is, please detail more information about the requirements of the special D2 visa and how Mercan will help satisfy those requirements with the current investment we purchase.
Well, like I said, the requirements, the spirit of the requirements is to keep the RE requirements. So there will be we don't anticipate any special requirements within this transition. Otherwise, this law would be deemed unconstitutional.
But the thing about the D2 and the golden visa is one of the requirements of D2 is you basically need to have a house, right? But for the golden visa investor, how they can prove about the housings or accommodations?
They don't. They are required to stay in Portugal for 7 to 14 days. You're not required to have a house. The transition to the D2 regime doesn't mean that you need to comply with the D2 requirements. It means that you transition to a general regime and are still subject to special requirements, the same ones that were in place at the time you were submitted. So that's what we are saying. Basically, there's no, I don't think that we can anticipate the law. We are in the beginning. It's important to follow up on the news, on the IIS website. But indeed, all the indications that we have, the spirit of the law, is that the requirements will be exactly the same. Okay?
With minimum 7 days and
Exactly.
14 days in 2 years.
Exactly.
And
with proof of stay exactly the same way as you have it today.
And this is also considered a way to leading to the citizenship pathway. Is exactly one question that the client is asking us.
Exactly, because the law that allows for citizenship is not the same as the one being changed. It's applicable to all visas, and no change was made to the law that would exclude golden visa investors or the ones that potentially transition to a D2 visa. Okay.
Thank you, Ines, because this is a very important question, because these days people, they are worried that if the 7 days stay per year and then certainly a proposal to change it to D2 could eventually lead to the citizenship pathway or not. Okay, thank you, Ines. So I think I'll come to the last questions for today's webinar for all the 3 guest speakers that we have. Will there be a golden visa program version 2.0? So Jerry, let's start with your opinion.
I think, you know, anything's possible at this point. I think people recognize that the type of work that we're doing in terms of developing properties, building infrastructure, and developing the tourism in Portugal is a valuable addition and valuable to the country. As things develop, as they review their priorities, as they look at economic development, I'm sure that this will be one of the things that will be a consideration that perhaps at some point in time will be considered going forward.
Well, we all hope for that. So thank you all the 3 guest speakers today for this very special talk show about the developments, the insight of the golden visa changings, and also to clarify to people about the D2 and the difference between D2 and the golden visa, and also to launch the new projects that we have. We're sorry that the time is limited, and we have gone through 1.5 hours, and we hope that we already address some of the most major concerns of everyone. So all the questions that you sent to us today, we'll try to send the response tomorrow, and we'll keep following up with you for next week. And for sure, we'll welcome for the call with Mercan and also with the lawyers of IAS. So I would like to say thank you again to Jerry, to Jordi, to Ines, and hope we can have a good day, and a good day to everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.